Yeah, so here's me. Denise already introduced me. You can reach out at LinkedIn and we can connect and interact. Um, so these webinars are part of a series from Centrilogic. Centrilogic, it's the company we work for. It has more than 15 years of experience delivering success with Microsoft technologies. We have a bunch of solution partner designations. These are basically after a certain number of members have certain amount of certifications, and plus you demonstrate some delivery capabilities and experience, then you get assigned these designations. They're not easy to get, so we're very proud to have so many of them. Um, we have a group of senior consultants and full-time employees that are really passionate about technology and process transformation. We work across North America and Europe, um, and we have one of the leading minds of applying AI to business transformations with Copilot's team, Power Apps, and OpenAI. And he's doing some webinars himself. I'll tell you more about that later. So Centrilogic does work do work on public and private cloud, on infrastructure, data AI, digital advisory, cybersecurity, and application development. So we can help you in the whole spectrum of IT. And yeah, so I am a principal on the application innovation and modernization parts, which is what leads us to this webinar. And that is all the marketing I'm willing to do. So let's go into the agenda. We're going to talk about app modernization, and we're going to try to cover the what, why, how, and some strategies. I'll tell you about some of the most common use cases that we're seeing these days and how we're thinking about it. So let's get right to it. So the first thing is what is modernization, and is the practice of updating older software and development practices to new approaches. This could be languages, processes, frameworks, and infrastructure platforms. So, for example, you have an old BB application and you wanna uh, modernize it by making it more cloud friendly or to improve efficiencies. Yeah, that's one example. So we also want to align to the infrastructure applications that and process align infrastructure application that and processes with modern practices, everything to meet the business needs. So if your technology is old, it might be preventing you from innovating. So making sure that everything is aligned. It's not super beneficial to be in the cloud if your apps, for example, cannot take advantage of elasticity and scalability and stuff and things like this. So making sure everything is pointing to the right direction. And modernizing goes beyond lift and shift. It's not just that you're in the cloud and now you're modern. If you're in the cloud but only on VMs, then you're basically using the cloud as a data center. There is much more than lifting and shifting to the modernization uh, path. So you need to really fully understand your modernization drivers, why you want to do it, and make sure that there is full support for this initiative. It is normally something that does start from the ground up, but without full support from executives, this is gonna be doomed to fail. You do need resources to make a modernization successful. So why do companies do this? For innovation, like if you're on old technology or a technology that is hard to update quickly, you're gonna fall behind. Um, when you modernize, in most cases, you're reducing technical debt. Um, you're basically um, gonna bring on overall improvements, including agility, efficiency, scalability. Um, One important aspect here is that you're going to attract talent. Nobody likes working on Visual Basic or mainframes, for example. Those are extremes, but really nobody, like people are not liking working in .NET Framework 4.x because it's looked as an older technology. So new talent want to work in in modern technologies. So having having that framework at your company is going to attract talent. Sometimes it just responds to industry regulation or compliance. Like maybe there are some libraries, and this happened to us last year. There is a company had some libraries that were decommissioned and not supported, and that was against the company's compliance policies. And and you have to go and update it. Or the industry regulation could be that you must have um, a certain disaster recovery or high availability requirement, and you go into the cloud to fulfill that. And that leads me into that replacement of data and unsupported technology. All right, so here you need to really understand what you want to do and what you're doing. Resist the urge to jump into uh, Chinese technologies and architectures. Make sure that they fit the bill. Like we saw this with Kubernetes quite a lot. Like I love Kubernetes and understand the value that it brings to some companies, but not everybody needs it. And we saw a lot of people trying to jump into it without having the the expertise internally, without having a real need, and without the applications being ready to go there. So make sure that you understand your needs and you create a plan. Even if Kubernetes was, for example, considered the right option, make sure that you understand how you're going to get there. So how we do this? So we've helped a lot of companies with their modernization, either of one application or an application portfolio. So what you really want to know is that application portfolio. List the applications that you have and start not only the applications. We understand that one solution may be a website that on the surface is only a front end and a back end with a database, but normally there is a ton of little processes that run around that. It's almost like an ecosystem of applications, and you need to understand all of them to see how they would map to a modernization strategy. So This is literally an Excel sheet with the name of the applications and what they do, the technologies, and if they're part of an overall solution. After you understand what you have, you can apply a modernization strategy to it, and we'll see that in some of the what the strategies are later. But it will also allow you to prioritize the applications and start thinking of a roadmap of how you're gonna those applications, and if it's going to the cloud or if it's just modernizing. So the roadmap should include milestone timelines, resource allocation. Um, this is pretty much a business plan to go and think about a business plan to you go and present to your boss, like this is all the things that we're going to do, consider the budget, and what skills and do we need, what are our priorities. um, don't rush. This doesn't need to be um, everything in 6 months. Take your time if you can, and do it right. Normally, we try to avoid a big bang approach. This is just one of those agile principles. So you start small, manageable task and implement changes incrementally. It allows you to almost learn by doing, and then start always monitoring and getting feedback from the system and get it better as you bring more and more of your applications into a modern technology. This goes beyond app modernization, right? So we're talking about application modernization quite a lot, but I also like to think about the practices and the tools and the technologies, DevOps principles, for example. So this refers a lot to automation on your development process. So having the right, for example, continuous integration and continuous deployment um, pipelines or processes, automation of unit test runs, having tools and technologies that help you with your development. GitHub is a great example with the advanced security features that they have that actually shift security left more into the development section, um, or using things like Copilot to help you be more efficient on your development. So it's not about the application itself, but it's also about the processes and the tools that are around your software development process. Um, Always after your start modernization, part of your modernization mindset should be how am I going to monitor and optimize this application once it's deployed, let's say to the cloud, or once it's deployed as a modernized application. Um, so as you execute your plan, always have in mind that you want to have a feedback from your work, and so that's what I'm mentioning here of monitor and optimize. So some tips here: start small and start smart, but start soon. Like planning, it's necessary, but don't get stuck on the planning uh, s- the planning phase. And I know my next point is don't skip planning. Don't skip it, but don't overcomplicate it either. If you have 600 applications, like one of our clients that we're helping, you don't need to really know what the strategy is for the 600 ones. Take your priority list and start doing those. Um, Then normally, even though we're talking about application modernization, normally the infrastructure needs to be in place. So infrastructure always goes first. And if you need to seek expert help, preferably from Centrilogic, we can help you with all of this. So here's a strategy. So here I went in the how. We talked about some modernization strategies. So they call them the 7 R's, and the first one is rehost. So let's say you need to, an example here is a data center exit. You need to get out of your data center for any reason. So this is what we do, we call a lift and shift. So you get your VMs from your data center, put them into the cloud. Usually usually there is no code changes or very minimal code changes are required to do that, because your application is not changing, it's still running within that VM. Where we have had troubles in this scenario is where you have some applications so old running on a VM on a data center that people don't have like installers of, they don't like, there is no documentation about applications, and that could be a gotcha. So when you're doing this, you can make sure that you know what things are running within VMs and stuff like that, and that you can recreate it somehow. Sometimes taking the image and putting it up there bring does not work completely. So just make sure that you understand what is running in each one of these, let's say, VMs that you're migrating in this strategy. So this strategy doesn't is more about moving to the cloud, for example, or moving from data center to data center, but it doesn't impact your applications very much. When we talk about replatform, normally there is code and configuration changes. So here's where your application is running, let's say traditionally on a VM, but you want to use some platform as a service, like in Azure App Service, for example, or if you want to containerize it and run it on Kubernetes or some other container host. So in that case, your changes are very focused on making it platform ready. And an example here is that if your application is writing into a file share, well, how would that work if it moves, for example, to the cloud on under app service? Like you need to either, the app service doesn't necessarily have a persistent um, file share. So, well, what are we gonna do with that? So code and config changes are mostly the changes that you're gonna be doing to your application where you re-platform. The next R is refactor. Um, this one, you may have to do big changes if your application is really dated and does not and uses practices that will break when you move it to the cloud environment. So things like using the session variables very heavily, um, or trying to reach like some system DLLs that are not available to you. Um, or maybe your application is using some kind of makeshift cache on files and stuff like that, and it's not efficient on or not available on the new platform that you're targeting. So normally refactoring is going to focus on making sure your code runs efficiently and with good quality and is maintainable on the new platform. So as I talk to this, just just notice how the effort on the application changes, it starts growing. Like Rehost is almost nothing, then Replatform, Refactor, Rearchitect. It's it's one of the most effort consuming ones. Like you are changing both application, the functionality and the code. For example, if you want to change from a monolith to a microservice, that's quite a re-architect. You're going to have to start ripping apart things and creating and ripping apart dependencies and creating uh, independent services. You may also want to, like if you have a web application that has a ton of, like, let's say, background processes, you may want to break those out of the application and run it in a distributed way. So it really involves a lot of work understanding the application and the application ecosystem of applications and understanding what are you going to do with each one of those pieces or how what target architecture you're going for and then do the changes that way. All right. 4 R's. The fifth R is rewrite. You recreate the whole application, basically mimicking the functionality, having the code, the source code as your base. Requires maximum effort because you're starting from zero and you're no you cannot create in most cases a one for one. It really involves architecting the greenfield application and then moving the functionality over. Um, a good example is a mainframe modernization, and I have an example at the end of this about something that we do and are doing. When you take the mainframe, for example, um, the only strategy really is rewrite. If you want to get away from mainframe, we also had one client that decided to put a web API in front of the mainframe, and that is when getting out of the mainframe, it's too costly or too difficult. But that's really just kicking the can down the street. Like you're gonna have to do it eventually. Um, but in that case, it was more a re-architect. So they didn't get out of the mainframe, but we re-architected a lot of pieces to then interact with the mainframe in a different way. Replace, like once you do your application portfolio list, you may decide that one of the applications, it was written 20 years ago, maybe is like an email sender and there weren't that many good services back then, so you created your own. And now in this modernization plan, you decide that you're going to use like a third-party service, maybe SendGrid or something like that. So you're replacing one thing for something that is ready to use, maybe a SaaS service. Normally, there is little or no development required, but it can introduce integration challenges, um, especially if you need to um, if you need to access services that may be protected by a network or something like that. But it is something as you go through your application portfolio, you want to see, well, what is the best thing? One of these 6 strategies. What is the best for each one of those applications? But I say six, and there I seven, but there's six. The next one is retire. There are gonna be some things in your application portfolio on in your workload portfolio that once you modernize, they may not be needed. So identify them and plan the retirement. So maybe you have like a background process, a workload that is cleaning some shared drive, but you know that on your modernization plan, there's gonna be a point where that shared file is not gonna be available anymore. So why you identify that and plan for that retirement of that workload. Now, the less code, the better. So if you retire one thing, it's gonna be good for everyone. All right, so I want to talk about some scenarios that we've seen in the field, let's say, that leads to cloud to app modernization. See how much. So we're good on time. So one of the core things that led app modernization for us for a long time and continues to do so is cloud migration and cloud readiness. So um, a company it plans to then move all their workloads from a data center to a cloud provider. We specialize on Azure Cloud. So a lot of my examples have talked about those type of services, but in general, it could be any cloud. So I did talk before about how the infrastructure go first. I want to make sure that when you're thinking about a cloud migration, you ensure there's a proper landing zone on that cloud for your workloads. A landing zone, it's almost like a little piece of that public cloud that was made just for you. It's protected with a network and normally it's protected by services. But also in that landing zone, in that carved space of cloud for your company, you can you can enforce policies that will guide the governance of your cloud, and it can also have like policies that limit regions or type of services that you're allowed to use. So make sure it's not the Wild West when you go into the cloud. It's not create an app and right click and deploy it. Make sure that there is a proper landing zone that is going to protect your workloads, your data, and there are many archetypes of landing zones. The most common seen is the hub and spoke architecture, where the hub has all the connectivity um, services that protect what's behind it. Um, if you are truly modernizing, leverage PaaS services. PaaS services are platform as a service services that allow you to um, focus more on your application than less in the infrastructure. App service is a service that I love on Azure because it's very versatile. It allows you to do many, many things. And it's an example of a typical PaaS service, and it will allow you to host web or background processes, and it's gonna um, and you're never gonna have to care about patching or updating. So when you go into the cloud, you're gonna have to shift your mindset in terms of the infrastructure. You're not gonna have to do as much to maintain the low level operation systems and patches and security. You're gonna want to focus on configuration of the service and in setting it up for your application to run. Normally, we so that's a lot of what we have been doing. and ensuring that the our clients have a proper landing zone to run their workloads, and advising on which are the right services to use for different types of applications. Containerizing the workloads allow you to deploy in different type of PaaS services, either in one cloud or in multiple clouds. So containerizing the workload is going to be something that it's going to give you flexibility in the future, and it doesn't cost too much upfront. So anything that is new, we try to think about, should it be containerized? So when we talk about application migrations itself, the main things that we're seeing are technologies upgrades. So we have various projects that are taking either mainframe or BB6 or MS Access. These are the interesting ones. You get MS Access or Excel with a ton of VBA on the background. And of course, they reach a point where they cannot scale. So they need to be modernized to new technologies. There's also a lot of scenarios when we just need to upgrade something. The company has had this application for a long time, and now they can no longer apply patches or get new versions, and then they need to upgrade the framework. These happen a lot, let's say, with like the Angular upgrade back in the day when they went from 1.x to 2. A lot of people needed to upgrade there. A lot of people want to upgrade from .NET Framework to .NET or .NET Core just so they can use a Linux host, for example, or to take advantage of everything that's new on .NET. So those are type of works that we are doing. Um, Now there is a path for some of these applications that is not necessarily coding or programming a new version of it. So for example, if we see a MS Access application that is used internally, we might consider a low-code, no-code modernization path with Power Platform. In some cases, that's what's needed. So it's not always that we're going to go and modify, like create a brand new application in pro code technologies such as .NET or React, Vue, whatever. That the modernization path might in fact be going to the Power Platform. And we have been doing a lot of re-architecting of applications to take full advantage of the cloud. And the main part where I've seen this is to go to distributed architecture, orchestrated normally by service bus, so a queue technology, a messaging technology. And this is part of that trend that we used to have these web applications that had a ton of background processes running on the same thread or on the same application. And what that generated was inefficiencies on the way the application worked. So instead of being a simple web app that consumed very little memory and resources, it was consuming a ton of resources because there were all these applications running on the background. So a re-architect of those applications implying ripping those out from the applications and create components that are very focused on one thing. So the web app is focused on serving the web app. And then let's say if there was a background processes that updated the database every hour, then that can become an Azure function that runs on a trigger. And what you've done is taking those resources and put them in another application, which makes the website more efficient. So distributed architecture with a messaging um, tool for orchestrating those is something that we've been doing quite a bit. And in fact, I think with any new application that we build, um, the distributed architecture mindset, it's in there on how we're gonna keep each workload focused on one thing. And this is some of the abilities that the cloud gives you. You can do that kind of architecture in a very inexpensive way. So I talked about this. It's not just about modernizing your infrastructure of your applications. You want to think about modernizing your dev experience and your DevOps processes. So introduce tools and best practices that modernize your development process. I talked about tools like GitHub, or you can also think about Azure DevOps and think about automation. If you're going if you're working in an agile way, maybe you have scrums and retrospectives. One of the things that I like to do in retrospectives is think about what can I automate that's going to save me time in the next iteration. But automation of, let's say, running unit tests and functional tests or anything that you can automate that way, having a predefined CI, continuous integration and continuous delivery pipelines, it's very, very important. In our case, um, I had a client that actually put this as a requirement in the definition of done of the story. Like if you had a user story that created a brand new application, like the CI and CD, at least the templates and needed to be set up and running. So make sure that you use that you're taking full advantage of that. And advantage and then tools that focus on security and quality, and GitHub has a fair amount of these, especially in the security part, are going to be of benefit during the development process. I like tools, for example, like code spaces that allow me to just do an application without having to set up a lot of environment on my local machine. I can work on it on a code space on the cloud. Um, for modernization of old technologies like mainframe and BB6, like we use tools like Copilot to help us understand the code and maybe even create a first draft of a translation of the code. So there's many things that can modernize your development experience and your DevOps processes. So make sure that you're considering that as something to modernize as well. So always identify all workloads of your solution. So this refers a little bit to the application portfolio that I was talking about, but also within one solution, let's say you have 100 applications, like within each one of those applications, are there like mini workloads running, and where are they running? How are they running? Uh, these are, and then should I apply the modernization strategy to those small workloads as well? And it refers to what I was talking about, like should I rip out a background process from a web app and run it as something else? And create a plan. And I think I talked about that before. So let's let's talk about a mainframe modernization project that we're working on. So this particular one, it had the mainframe for all the processing of information. Um, internal users to this company would use the mainframe as their entry point. External users would actually use a web app and would submit documents and forms and whatnot. And then there were processes that would, in one case, let me see if I can do this. So if a user here would, oops, if a user here would submit something to, it would submit like a document or a form, it would go into a file that then it will go into the mainframe. If the mainframe wanted to reply, would generate a file that then go into the web app. So the mainframe actually constituted the main database as well here, the source of truth. So this is like for internal users and external users, but then there are external partners. So every now and then, this mainframe needed to produce reports or files that would be sent to external service server or an external database. So if you think about, oops, I don't know, I'm gonna exit that because my mouse is going crazy. So if you think about what those processes are, it's a lot of one-off processes that are reading files or moving files and writing into different stores. So the first thing that we did for this client is create their landing zone. They were new to the cloud, so we went and created a safe space for them in the cloud to create all their to migrate all their workloads. And a single stamp for this application on the cloud would look something like this. They will have two web applications, one for administration or internal users and one for consumers. It would be they would be talking to a Cosmos DB, so there's no need for the web app mainframe kind of synchronization anymore. They're using the same database. The second database was for logs and audit trail. It was all orchestrated by service bus and messaging, and a lot of the processes that run in here are now running as serverless functions and as jobs in Databricks. So a lot of the infrastructure was modernized, and it was for each one of these workloads, we identify what was the right uh, Azure service to use for them. And then after that, there was just a lot of code writing. We had a big team there doing the rewrite, and at the same time, and they were all using Copilot for different reasons, but the main architect was using it to understand some of the mainframe code that was not documented anywhere. So another type, I want to talk about some of the tools that you have available to do your modernization. I want to talk to you specifically about one extension called Azure Migrate Application and Code Assessment. It's an extension that you could install into Visual Studio. And once you install it, you can right click here and say Replatform to Azure. So this is an application that I have that is in .NET 4.6, I think, and is running on a VM in this client. I don't know. He just gave me a VM to deploy it into. But I can go and say replatform to Azure and create a new report, and you can pick what is it that you're targeting. You could be targeting container apps or Kubernetes. Let's just Kubernetes on Windows. So what I selected was App Service Windows because it's a .NET Framework one. And then you select next, and which projects do you want to include? Next, what do you want to do? Is there a custom settings or something like that? And analyze. Once you analyze, it comes with a solution kind of like this. What is it that you need to do to make your application ready for app service, for example? So I think if you think about strategies, what we're doing in this case is replatform. We're replatforming from a VM to an app service. And it kind of tells you, hey, you have some mandatory things to do, optional, and then some potential problems. So let's see. Um, let's talk about what those are. But before, they have now integrated Copilot into this solution. So you can say, hey, let GitHub Copilot guide you through the steps that you need. So I already click on here, and this is what Copilot started telling you. Hey, you have local database connections, file IO, logging, and other issues. So I can say, well, let's start with the database issues, and it's gonna analyze the code and the report result, and it's gonna give me some idea of what to do. While it thinks, and I don't know why it's taking so long. Normally it doesn't. I'm gonna go into project and see. Well, here I have two issues, so I'm gonna go into this library and I can start seeing what the issues are. A component, where the issue is, and it tells me exactly the line of code that I have that is generating a problem. Um, okay, so let's see. Copilot has been busy here telling me stuff. Let's see. So he said, well, let's start creating an SQL database. Assume like you have that. Now I'll have to update that connection string. So it took a long time just to say that, but in some cases it's more useful. So this is a solution that helps out identifying what are potential issues for you if you're targeting something. Um, the other one is the .NET Upgrade Assistant. So um, if you want to upgrade a .NET version, you can use that .NET Upgrade Assistance to help you with it. There are other tools. Let me go back to the presentation. I think I mentioned it here. There is a tool called Azure Migration that if you have a lot of VMs, you installed a component on the VM host and it collects information. It will tell you what your strategy for migration is. Um, all right, so I'll continue with this with the presentation. I want to let's see if I can copy this into the. So when you're thinking about your workloads, there is a decision metrics that could help you, and I'm gonna post this in here. Sorry. So basically here you start thinking about your workload and is it brand new, yes or no? If it's a migrate, what you can do, and it kind of guides you through it. So that's a very useful thing. The other one is this document that I really, really like. Um, and it's actually a booklet. And it was telling you is like it used to be that once you chose a technology because you had to do some investment or something, you were selecting now either A or B when it came to your workload. Well, with the cloud, that mentality is completely changed, and you can very easily say A plus B. Just select whatever service you need and apply the right solution to the right problem. And it's no problem in thinking A plus B. So those are two resources that I really like, and I actually use it quite often. You just go back here. All right, so I think that is my presentation, and I think we're almost at time anyway. But I do want to talk about upcoming webinars that we have. My colleague Shane Castle, it's a wizard with data and AI, and he's coming up with these two webinars in March. I think Denise is going to post the links on the chat for these two if you want to register. And that's it. Thank you.